Hello, this is Stephen Nojiri, and this is another Fukushima Ryu video. In this video, we're going to take a serious and critical look at the addendum to the Fukushima Ryu Shinobi no maki. Now, the addendum is the copy that most of you are familiar with. The addendum is the version that is in the Tokyo National Museum, and it's a copy, a book form of the Fukushima Ryu Shinobi no maki. It's not a scroll form, it's the book form. And at the end of it, it has an addendum or a series of notes attached to the end. The reason that we're going to take a critical look at this document is on the screen. 1. The addendum is not passed along with the actual scroll. This is important. 2. The addendum is lacking in certain bits of data from the main scroll. For example, the lineage chart is not complete. 3. The addendum has some sections that do not match up with the original scroll, and some of the diagrams are different as well. 4. The addendum was written during what's called the Inko Ryu period. So there's this period between 1770 and 1800 where another school called Inko Ryu has like a burst of documents. This is when all of its documents are written in this 30-year period. This is important. 5. The addendum seems to favor Inko Ryu interpretations. And 6. The addendum in some places contradicts the original scroll, or the data provided just simply doesn't jive with the teachings. The data just doesn't make sense because it's not the actual teaching. So these points, this is why we're critically looking at this, because I'm going to present a theory during the course of this video because of these 6 points. Now take a look at your screen in case some of you don't remember, but that is the book copy of the Fukushima Ryu scroll with the addendum attached to it, or the addendum is bound into it. It's one book, and the first half is the scroll and the second half is the addendum. That is the one that is in the Tokyo National Museum. There was another copy of this in the National Archives. It is that copy that was in the National Archives is now missing. Someone has stolen it. So you have 3 versions, you have 3 copies of the Fukushima manual. You have the original scroll, which I currently caretake. You have the book form that is in the Tokyo Museum, which is the one that we're discussing, that has the addendum added to it. Then you have the one that was in the National Archives that's missing, and that is the one that also has the addendum added to it. And again, I must point out that the scroll, the actual scroll, does not have the addendum attached to it, and the addendum does not travel with it. So that's a critical point. Why is the addendum missing from the scroll? Why is it only in these book forms? So on your screen now is a clip from the addendum copy, the Tokyo Museum copy. So right then and there, you see that it has 5 names listed, but I got a big red arrow. In 1794, which is when this original one is supposedly written, there would have been more names. It should not end with Miyake Sensei. So Miyake Juzo should not be the last name. If it was written in 1794, there should absolutely be more names on the list. So why are there no names on the list? And that makes it seem like whoever is copied this is copying from an unofficial, older copy of the document. If it's an older, unofficial document, it's not going to have the rest of the names because it's going to be a copy made around Miyake Juzo's time. Because again, in 1794, there should be 2 more names on there. They're not there. The other problem is, circled in orange, that name's just wrong. That's the wrong name. So why, which is awkward. Why is the name wrong? And then the other part is, in the actual scroll, the full name of each person is listed, but on this copy, the full names are not listed. The personal names are missing. Right? So why? They're in the scroll, so why are they not in this? So the book form is lacking information which is in the actual scroll. So again, makes it seem like the person who copied this is copying an old, unofficial copy, because if it was the actual scroll, they would have this information. Furthermore, because the addendum has these odd errors and omissions, that's why I'm saying it seems very hard that the author would be accessing the scroll in 1794. It seems like they're working off an older copy, an unofficial copy, perhaps an unofficial older copy that made its way to the author somehow. And again, the probability of this seems to go up when you know the following. So there is another school called Inko Ryu, and it developed in the same area that Fukushima Ryu was already located. This would be the Chugoku region. So like Hiroshima, Shimane, Yamaguchi, that part of Japan. So this was Fukushima Ryu's territory. But then in the late 1700s, a school called Inko Ryu begins to burst forth in this area as well. So, and when it sort of seems to just come alive in the 1770s, in a 30-year period, there's a dozen or so documents that are written. So we feel compelled then to have to ask, could the addendum somehow, since it's written in this period, could it somehow be connected to this burst of Inko Ryu in this 30-year period? And at the time of this video, I personally believe it's highly possible, highly probable. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trek through some key points. So first point, the Inko Ryu also has an addendum document written around the same time. I have not gotten a chance to read it, but I have a sneaking suspicion that the Inko Ryu addendum might be very, very similar to this Fukushima Ryu addendum. Basically, they're written around the same time. They use the same name. The title's the same, except Inko Ryu is switched out with Fukushima Ryu, but everything else but the title's the same. Like, personally, I feel like it may be this very similar document. But also, point number two, we know that Inko Ryu and Fukushima Ryu overlapped somehow. There is some kind of overlapping. Now, whether that overlapping is official or unofficial is not clear. For example, there does exist a document which bears the name of Fukushima Ryu, and it has some material from the original Fukushima scroll, but it also has extra material in it. However, the extra material in that scroll, that second Fukushima scroll, is directly pulled from Inko Ryu. And in fact, in actuality, this alleged second Fukushima Ryu scroll, which I actually don't believe is a canon scroll. I think it's actually using the name Fukushima Ryu unofficially. I don't believe it's actually a Fukushima Ryu scroll. But this second Fukushima Ryu scroll was actually found packaged together, bundled together with an Inko Ryu scroll, of which this Fukushima Ryu scroll is basically just a copy of. So it looks like an Inko Ryu scroll and a Fukushima Ryu scroll, but it's basically the exact same scroll. So yes, you heard me correctly though. I did just say that I don't believe that this second Fukushima scroll is really a Fukushima Ryu document. At present time, I don't believe that. The contents of the scroll appear to be. Now I have to be clear here. I have not had a chance to properly investigate and analyze both that Inko Ryu scroll and that Fukushima scroll. I've only had samples. But from the samples and from alleged statements from people that have investigated both of them, allegedly, it's the same document. It's the same material. So aside from it allegedly being the same document, the fact is simply that they are also bundled together, which is again highly suspicious. On top of that, within the Fukushima Ryu scroll, the hiding amulet, the spell for hiding, is not the actual Fukushima Ryu dog eye spell, but it's a spell of it's the blind Buddha spell. Now the blind Buddha spell, that comes from Inko Ryu. It's a spell where basically you have a small effigy of a female Buddha and you write some stuff on the front and back, and then you promise to add eyes if you're successful in not being spotted on a mission. There's a whole methodology to this spell. Well, one of the problems with this spell though is that this type of magic, this specific magic where you promise to add eyes to the deity, or promise to add legs, or promise to do something to this image of the deity, or sometimes maybe you turn the picture backwards and then promise to turn it right side up, etc., etc., etc. There's a whole type. This is a type of magic, but it's a type of magic that developed in the late 1700s. I'll make a video about this type of magic in the future, because, for example, you have types of magic in old Japan. So this type of magic, the manipulation of the image of a deity, making promises to either add to the image or to fix the image and stuff, that's a late 1700s sort of type of magic. There's other types of magic too, like I'll talk about poetry magic, certain ways that you write spells or incant spells using poems, splitting the poems in half, certain this, doing this. There's genres of magic. Anyway, this genre of magic is a late 1700 spell. And again, we know that Fukushima Ryu's actual spell for hiding is dog eyes. So the fact that an Inko Ryu spell is the hiding spell makes me go, well, that's Inko Ryu. That's not Fukushima Ryu at all. Fukushima is dog eyes. Blind Buddha is Inko Ryu. So I'm just going to throw these images up on your screen very quickly. So on your left, that's later Edo period magic from Inko Ryu, right? Little divinity figures of gods that you make promises to, etc., etc. That is later. That's like late 1700s, 1800s, later Edo period. Fukushima Ryu, correct Fukushima Ryu, is on the right. That's dog eyes, right? Dog eyes tied up with horse hairs. It's an ancient and old indigenous magic found in Fukushima Ryu. It's not random hocus pocus. There is an ancient history related to this kind of magic. This kind of magic goes back to like tribal stuff, right? So, like we're talking about samurai magic that goes back to the tribal roots of samurai culture type magic, right? We're talking about like Izumo, Grand Shrine, ancient magic type stuff, right? Not later Edo period deity image manipulation magic. So again, Fukushima Ryu proper is dog eye amulet. Inko Ryu's blind Buddha, no, it says Fukushima Ryu on the title of that second document, but it's really Inko Ryu. It's not Fukushima Ryu, it's Inko Ryu. So because this extra Fukushima document, or the second scroll from 1774, which again is right in the middle of the Inko Ryu burst of documents, it just seems to be Inko Ryu, right? And it matches. It's kept with a matching Inko Ryu document. About, like I said, dozens of Inko Ryu documents pop into existence around this same time period. So I think that this third document, so you have the original Fukushima Ryu scroll, the actual correct scroll for the school. You have this addendum document, which is questionable, and then you have this third document, this 1774 Fukushima scroll. And I just don't think it's a Fukushima Ryu document. I call it copyright infringement. But I just, at present time, at the time of making this video, I think there's a little bit of copyright infringement going on here, to use a modern term. The material that's in the scroll, again, it's just Inko Ryu material. And again, so also we have to ask this question. If Fukushima Ryu genuinely had this additional material, why then would it never have made its way into the actual main scroll? So for example, we know that the Fukushima Ryu Shinobi no maki was transcribed and properly signed, sealed, stamped, officially copied in the 1790s. So then why would none of this material have made it into the scroll? It's odd. That would have been the perfect time. If all of this new material had made its way into the school, the perfect time to add it into the actual real scroll would have been when the transmission took place in the 1790s, and the scroll, they could have added it, stamped, sealed, signatures, all of that done, official document. No, but it's not. Thus, all that happened is the scroll was copied and the new signature was added, and then the stamps and seals were put there. None of this stuff made it into the scrolls. So again, that's a really big deal. If all this extra material, if all this Inko Ryu related material was official, it never made it into the scroll. That's a big deal. Anyway, so that's why all this combination of factors is why I don't believe that this second Fukushima scroll from the 1770s is actually Fukushima Ryu. I believe it's Inko Ryu, and it's inappropriately or incorrectly using the label Fukushima Ryu. Okay, but now we're getting way off course because now we've been analyzing and criticizing this 1774, as I believe, falsely labeled document. Let's get back to the addendum. So, coming back to the addendum. The reason I talked about this alleged Fukushima scroll, which I don't believe is a Fukushima scroll from 1774, is because the addendum makes a lot of similar errors. So now we're back to the addendum. The addendum makes an error, seems to reference Inko Ryu ideas in many places. It seems, okay, so you have a document that appears to be written during the Inko Ryu burst period. It seems to reflect Inko Ryu ideas. Kind of suspicious, right? I mean, I'm not saying this is a hard fact, but I'm saying probability-wise, we are now in the territory of suspicious behavior. So what I'm trying to say is that it's probable, highly probable, that the Fukushima Ryu addendum, like that 1774 Fukushima document, may be an unofficial document bearing the name of Fukushima Ryu, but it's actually more reflective of or based off of an Inko Ryu root. Let's discuss some of the contradictions. So for example, right off rip, the horse spell. Now the directions of the horse spell in the addendum just don't match the actual method of the spell. It tells you to do one thing and then do something else. It basically says when you write it, write this, and then when you break the spell, write this. But the problem is what it tells you to write is not correct. That's not how the spell's actually done. The actual way of casting and stopping this spell is a play on words in the original spell. But that play on words is completely lost and is completely missing in the addendum. Why does the addendum not actually know how to cast and break this spell? That's weird. But it also seems to have some other instructions which mirror the version of the spell as taught in Inko Ryu, because Inko Ryu also has this horse spell, but it is different in Inko Ryu than it is in Fukushima Ryu. And what I'm trying to tell you is that the addendum seems to match the Inko Ryu version, not the Fukushima Ryu version. In other words, it sounds like an Inko Ryu person is writing the commentary to the horse spell. So that's kind of an issue. That's a big red flag, really, at least in my mind. The dog eye amulet. So remember, the dog eye amulet is a genuine Fukushima Ryu technique. The Inko Ryu uses the blind Buddha spell, right? The little effigy of the Buddha without eyes. Well, oddly enough, not oddly enough, in conjunction with that, the addendum seems to be remarkably scant on the details surrounding the amulet. You would think that the addendum would have, there's a lot of old lore and history surrounding this dog eye amulet, but the addendum just doesn't have it. The addendum is basically like, yeah, make the amulet and keep it on your person. That's an incredibly scant amount of commentary. Again, is it because this person actually knows more about the blind Buddha spell? So they don't really know what to say about the dog eye spell? That's why there's hardly any commentary? It's possible. The 5 factors in the original scroll, in the scroll of refining intention, there's a mention to the 5 factors. It's clearly the 5 factors of Sun Tzu. Clearly the 5 factors from Sun Tzu. But the addendum lists 5 Confucian traits. It's an obvious mistake on the addendum's part. And the only thing I can think of is because late 1700s, very Confucian, the author is just thinking Confucian, but it's clearly Sun Tzu's 5 factors. But again, the mistake, the addendum is clearly wrong when it's lists the Confucian traits. The section about times to sneak in. The original scroll gives times to sneak in, gives a particular model for when to sneak in, but then the addendum contradicts this technique by offering a different set of instructions, which I don't know if they come from Inko Ryu, but I suspect that if we looked into Inko Ryu, we would find the instructions. So the addendum's instructions are different from the original scroll's instructions. And like I said, I would wager that we'd probably find the addendum's version in the Inko Ryu documents. Haven't found them yet, but but I also haven't read all the Inko Ryu documents yet. But it's just odd that the addendum would contradict with an entirely different set of instructions. The diagram for the snakeskin sleeping powder, it's just the addendum version has a very different diagram. And why? Now that's a minor point. That doesn't prove anything, but it sticks out in my head. Why is that diagram so considerably different? But again, that may not be anything. But it is weird that it is so different. In the spell of the interlocking dreams, the addendum goes on and on and on about the charred newts, and it's just odd because the charred newt is kind of a long-standing love or attraction magic ingredient. Like, why the focus on that? I half suspect it almost feels like the author doesn't have anything else to doesn't know what else to talk about, so it just goes on and on and on about the charred newts. But the odd part of that is, of all the ingredients listed in the spell, the charred newts is probably the one that is the most well known as being a magical ingredient. So why the excessive detail on the charred newts? It's just odd. And then one of the biggest things that stands out to me is the complete silence and complete lack of details on the 10 treasures chant and the 10 treasures hand seals. So in the original scroll, it lists the chant and it says you have to do the 10 treasures chants and then you do stuff with your hands. But then in the commentary, it says nothing. It doesn't say nothing. It adds nothing of substance. It doesn't talk about 10 treasures chant. It doesn't talk about the hand seals. It doesn't say anything. It's just odd that it doesn't say. It's supposed to be the addendum. It's supposed to go into, and it just is silent on this topic. And I find that so incredibly odd. It's either that the author just straight up doesn't know what to do with this spell, doesn't know the 10 treasures chant, doesn't know the hand seals, doesn't know the sequence, the correct sequence when you're counting and what to do when you get to 100 and all of that stuff. You're supposed to do the chant and do the hand seals per the numbers, and when you get to 10, you do something on 100. There's a sequence you're supposed to do, and it's just completely missing from the addendum. In the original scroll, it says, here's the chant, you're supposed to do something with your hands, and everything else is passed down in Kuden. And you would think in the addendum that there'd be a little bit more information, but the addendum just does not have it. Straight up. You would never know that this was the 10 treasure chant and that there's hand seals or anything. You would never know. The addendum is just silent on it. So again, is it because the commentator doesn't know this, or is it just because for some weird reason they want to keep it secret? I have no idea. But it seems like the commentator doesn't know what to actually do at this point, because there's not even the mention of the 10 treasures, hand seals, or anything like that. So again, now in red on your screen, this is a key point. In many places, the addendum seems to add a lot of information onto certain things. Information that in some cases is reflective of Inko Ryu's teachings. And then on some things, such as this 10 treasures chant, it's lacking it. Or on the horse spell, it contradicts it. And it's quite strange. When you tally all of this up, it's quite strange. So what does this mean? It means that at the time of this video, right? August of 2025. I think that the addendum version of the Fukushima Ryu manual is not an official document. I am not convinced that it was part of the formal training, and I'm actually currently of the mind that it was done privately by someone who had more of an Inko Ryu background or an Inko Ryu association or Inko Ryu influence. Now, this is only a theory. I don't know any of this for sure, but we know that the actual Fukushima Ryu Shinobi no Maki is signed, stamped, sealed. It's an official document. It has the genealogy, and we know that the addendum version does not have any of those signs or seals. So the addendum version, the addendum is not part of the official document. The addendum does not bear any official seals or stamps or signatures. And the addendum seems to contradict or be more of an Inko Ryu influence than the Fukushima Ryu. So these things adding up really makes me feel like the addendum version is just a private document. Again, it's only a theory. I don't know any of this for 100% sure, but I'm pretty confident, as of right now, I'm pretty confident in this assessment. I feel that the current evidence does lean heavily to the side of an Inko Ryu person dipping their feet into Fukushima Ryu waters. I also do not think that the 1770s extra Fukushima document, the scroll that was found bound with an Inko Ryu document, I don't believe that is an actual Fukushima Ryu scroll either. So I don't think that the addendum is a formal or official document, and I think that that Fukushima Ryu scroll from the 1774 is not an official document either. I think that both of these documents are private documents written by outsiders. By outsiders, I mean people associated with Inko Ryu that are dipping their feet into Fukushima Ryu territory. So as of August 2025, I am of the mind that the only official, genuine Fukushima Ryu document is the actual Fukushima Ryu Shinobi no Maki, and that the addendum is not official, and that the 1774 scroll is not official. That is my current stance. Now, I have not had a chance to survey and study much of the Inko Ryu documentation because most of it is under lock and key of private collections, right? Lock and key, private collections, no one wants to let you. But I have had a chance to read some of the Inko Ryu material. And from that material and the analysis of the addendum, this is why I'm putting forth this theory. I'm looking at the history of Fukushima Ryu, I'm looking at the teachings of Fukushima Ryu, and I'm looking at the addendum, and I'm looking at this alleged second Fukushima scroll, and the addendum and the alleged second scroll just don't fit. They stick out, they have so many issues and so many problems. And all the issues and the problems are resolved if they are Inko Ryu documents, sort of, for lack of a better word, unofficially using the Fukushima Ryu title. So again, this is only a theory, but I personally feel this is correct. Right? I don't know if it's correct, but it matches it seems to be the correct answer at present time, at least. So it is currently only a theory, but I did want to put this out to the viewers, that there is something very funny going on with the Inko Ryu, with some kind of unofficial overlap with the Fukushima Ryu. And in future research, it may show that it was more official than I assess at present. But at present time, whatever funny business is going on with Inko Ryu between 1770 and 1800, and this whatever is going on with utilizing Fukushima Ryu material, it appears to be unofficial. Inko Ryu sort of dipping their feet in the waters of Fukushima Ryu not officially. So anyway, I'll bring this video to an end, but I wanted to let the viewers know that this is my current stance on the topic.